Hello, Herlighters. It's Erin Foley back in the booth talking women's sports. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode that we recorded live in Seattle. It was a blast. And the tour continues. I have some fun guest updates before we get into the episode. I'll be in Chicago this Saturday, October 26th at the Lincoln Lodge with WNBA and Chicago Sky beat reporter Annie Costabile, who writes for the Chicago Sun-Times. She's had a prolific career covering basketball and other women's sports, so she is going to be an incredible guest. And then the following night, Sunday, October 27th at 6 p.m., I'll be in Minneapolis at Roxy's Cabaret, and my guest is Minnesota Frost goalkeeper Nicole Hensley. I mean, this is going to be so fun. We're talking hockey, Olympics, her life off the ice. I can't freaking wait. Is this going to be the best weekend of my life? Probably. So get your tickets, and I hope to see you there. Okay, today I got another good episode for you. We're talking tennis with former USTA president and CEO Katrina Adams. I mean, her resume is incredible. She was a professional tennis player for 12 years, ranked both nationally in singles and doubles, then became the first African American president of the USTA. She's also the youngest and the only former player to hold this position. And she was elected to serve an unprecedented 2 consecutive terms. She's been a TV commentator for the Tennis Channel and the CBS Sports show We Need to Talk. And currently, she's the executive director of the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program. I mean, she's a total rock star. I was really looking forward to our conversation because I've been in love with tennis since I was a little kid. And I never played on a team or anything. I mean, we'd hit the ball around from time to time. I mean, I was terrible. Like I would take these like huge softball swings and just slam it. I mean, it wouldn't go over the net. It would go over the fence. So, yeah, didn't play professionally. But tennis has been so impactful in my life because it was the first professional sport that I saw women play on television. These women, oh my God, they were so badass. Like Steffi Graf and Sellis and Hingis and Davenport, and then the Williams sisters come along. I remember my family getting up like really early for breakfast at Wimbledon. It was Saturday and Sunday morning watching the women's and men's finals. Like we'd get up super early and we get like special breakfast treats and we'd make like an awesome event out of it. It was so much fun. So getting to talk to Katrina about the sport that we both love and hearing her stories about playing and how she's been tirelessly working to grow the game was such a treat. So let's jump right in. So obviously you've played tennis since you were like, 6 years old. You played at the highest level, singles, doubles. You've coached. Love to get your thoughts on if you could change one fundamental rule of tennis, what would it be?
Oh boy, that's a good one. If I could change one fundamental rule of tennis. Oh man, look, bad behavior. I love bad behavior. No, I was a bad kid on the court when I was a junior. Um,
Tell us about that. What was did you have a moment where you lost
I
it?
hated to lose a point. I just hated my nickname was Jane McEnroe back in the day. I grew up when John McEnroe was like the bad boy of tennis. But I broke a lot of rackets when I was a kid. Yeah, I had a bad attitude. It was bad. I got better over time. But no, that's not one thing that I would change. I hate bad sportsmanship. I hate watching kids out here with bad sportsmanship on the court. It's not a good look. I hate seeing the pros doing that because I mean I get it now.
Yeah.
But I hate seeing the pros because the kids are, they're emulating them. They imitate everything they do. So I think they're kind of doing it already. At the Open this year, I was pretty shocked that um, during the changeovers or not waiting to the changeovers, they're letting the fans coming down in between play because it's not really a distraction. We have trained behavior in sport, right? So if you grow up thinking that there shouldn't be any movement, then you let everything distract you.
Mm.
And so I love the fact that during the US Open this year, you didn't have to wait to a changeover for the fans to come in and out of the court. So at the end of the game, on the even games, they were letting the fans come in And I don't think I saw any of the players actually complaining because our mindsets are right there on the court. And so when you allow for there to be a distraction, it just means that you're not really focused on what you're doing on the court. So I think that was kind of a good change, and that's the one thing I would change. Um, as far as fans coming in um during play. Now we're talking about professional sports where there are actual audiences. Not everybody has an audience at a junior tournament or what have you, but I think it's just the minor things, the talking in the background. When you look at all the other professional sports, it's about entertainment, right? And tennis is so quiet. But I think us as players, when we're out here practicing and having our music on in the background and having fun and competing, that's not a distraction. So why should it be when we're actually playing?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It was just this stark contrast during the US Open in particular in 2020. I was like, "Whoa, that must have been, I mean, no fans." And we were just like, I'm always excited to watch tennis, but especially during that time, but I'm like, what is the now the players like have to do with absolute, I mean, they're used to no quiet, but that was just like nothing there. But you just
Uh,
have to pivot and get used to it, or get used to some guy screaming about nachos, midpoint now.
yeah, I mean, silence can be really daunting on a court. I mean, I've played when I was on tour, I hated being the 10 a.m. match indoors because there was no one there. Right? So you could hear a pin drop. You had like 12 people in the audience and 5 of them were with you. And the other 5 were with your opponent, and then you had 2 random people that were showing up. And then as the match went on, you had other fans coming in, but you hated to be that 10 a.m. match because there was no atmosphere. It was like playing a practice match almost. So you love having a crowd, you love having noise. So there you have it.
Yeah. I was um I was thinking about that when I was writing out the question. And I also wanted to ask you about coaching, because I was thinking, for me, it was always wild how tennis players couldn't get any coaching. And we went from absolutely no coaching to now it feels like there's just nonstop coaching. And I think for me, I would tweak that. I don't know. I don't love the going over, they're toweling off and talking to their coaches like nonstop. I think for me, I would just give every player like one timeout per set, and I don't know. I was just thinking about that. Like, do you like the new coaching rules, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is kind of extreme when you look at it. It went from 0 to 100. Tennis has always been that game that you're out on the court and you're thinking for yourself and you're strategizing and you're tactically and technically figuring things out. At the end of the day, you're still the one that's out there hitting and running and seeing the ball, so you still are the one that's doing the work. Yeah, you can have someone telling you what to do and how to do it, but you still have to execute. So it doesn't matter who's telling you what. I think, I played college tennis, so at least when playing college tennis, you still had someone that was out there that was able to tell you and give you some guidance. Even college coaching is elevated since when I played back in the 80s. My coach was not in my ear all the time and on every point and able to coach the way that they do today, which is very different, right? So everything has evolved and kind of elevated over the years. But I think when you look at how they are coaching now in college tennis and how they're coaching now on the professional tour, it is almost every point. Some players like it, some players don't. So you don't see all the players looking to their camp or to their coach on after every point or after every game. You see players looking for encouragement, but not so much for information, right? Because at the end of the day, you still have to execute. So yeah, you can tell me to hit the ball cross court or down the line or to their forehand, but I still have to figure it out. I don't know where you're about to hit the ball to me, so I still have to be able to focus and execute and see the ball and move and run, etc. So, yes, there's some guidance, but I'll see, it's hard to implement something and then take it away. So I don't see it going away. I do see maybe it kind of dialing down a little bit over the years, but we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, it just was, for a fan experience, it was just kind of wild to see, it sometimes, and this is going to go into my next question about momentum shifts, but you just like, oh, you're like, oh God, like they're really going through it right now. I wish someone could, jump over, down from the stands and give them a pep talk or tell them like, adjustments. But now it just, yeah, it just feels like it's kind of nonstop.
Well, you
But
know
you're
what?
right.
What
I
I
mean, yeah,
do think, though, is that you see the person that you're really seeing the personality of the player, right? And you're
yeah.
seeing how they are interacting with their coach or not, right? I mean,
Mm,
you've like actually seen like some arguments from the court with
yeah.
players and coaches. So you see that dynamic, which I think is very interesting. And I think from a fan perspective, it really allows them to come inside the professional world a little bit more to really see that dynamic. But it's a media thing too, right? So I also say how much is too much from the media perspective, right? I mean, the camera is right there in their face. It's right there in the coach's face, it's right there in the player face. So nothing is protected and nothing is sacred. And so I think, in my opinion, and I'm in the media, I do think that we show a little bit too much from a camera perspective, that sometimes you just got to let stuff be between that player and the coach and not have everything shown, because I think it does take away a little bit as well.
Oh, absolutely. I don't need, first of all, the camera angles when they're practically up their nose is so egregious to me. You're like, they're laying it all on the court. It's like this physical specimen. They're sweating and screaming and yelling and or the highest of highs, lowest of lows. I don't need a camera like this close to, I feel like that's just way, way too much. And also it's like, you know, as far as also social media, it's like everybody puts out like, their best moments out. Like, oh, life is great, but then when you're watching them on the court, I love to see the interactions. It really does give us as fans, a look into their personalities. But it, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like they don't have a filter when they're down, 4-2, and someone's, the coach is screaming at them. So it's just, or they're screaming at the coach. I do have to say this real quick though. It just seems like a thankless job to be a coach during during the match, because they're just kind of sitting there having to kind of take it. I know that's just part of the job, but I mean, you coached. Was that those moments must be kind of brutal.
Well, you know what? You're so close and so connected to the player. I mean, you probably have one of the closest relationships with your player than you do even probably with your spouse or your partner or your girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever that might be as a coach. And and so the guys that are up there, we as female players yelling at our male coaches, you know, you probably yell at them more than you would if you're yelling at your female coach, right? Just because of the dynamics of it. You think they can take it because 'cause we're tough, and they're just kind of sitting there and they're just, and so it's a special bond that you have with your coach. You come off the court and you're cool because you're letting it all out. But I think the tennis court is your office, and it's your domain of where you can truly be yourself, but it's your office and it's where you shine. It's where you are able to rise to the occasion or not, and you leave it all out on the court. And it's where your highest highs are, and it's where your lowest lows are. And sometimes we get caught in displaying our lowest lows, if things aren't going well. And that coach is there, and they're going to get the short end of the stick sometimes because you got to blame somebody more so than yourself. Um, so, and I think that's where maybe because the coaching has come into play and there's a back and forth conversation now, that the coaches are probably getting it even more so because the players are able to talk back to the coaches, right?
Yeah.
Whereas before there was no communication, now there's an open dialogue, and I think the players are really taking it out on coaches, probably more because they know they can talk back and not be penalized. So I know it's interesting.
It is. No, it's really interesting. I mean, I kind of love it. Like I'm happy. You know, I think there's a happy medium. We did go from 0 to 100, but just as a fan, seeing how they interact and seeing, you know, sort of in real time adjustments that the coaches, you know, saying in the back and forth is, I don't know. It's just it's kind of really engaging for a fan. Okay, let's talk about momentum shifts. I've been obsessed with this for like, you know, my entire life watching tennis. And you have such a fantastic perspective as a player, as a coach, and then the highest level of administration, which we'll talk about. But it is just uncanny to me how many momentum shifts there are. I mean, there's 1,000 examples. I was just thinking the other day of the Sabalenka Coco Gauff 2023 U.S. Open, where Sabalenka's like just ripping it up, you know, in the first set, just demoralized. And I was just like, well, as a fan, I'm already going, God, what a year for Coco. You know, it's so amazing that she's here. She's going to be in so many other finals. It's just not her day. Boom, shifts started. She elevates, Sabalenka goes down, and now Coco Gauff wins. And I don't know. I know there's probably all kinds of different answers. I just wanted to hear your perspective of what happens and like, how do you get out of it? How do you get, you know, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, momentum shifts on the tennis court are they happen all the time. And what people don't realize is, first of all, it's mental. It's one thought that can come in your mind that completely takes you off course. It can be one shot that happened that you remember was a turning point in a match before that either took you on the losing end or brought you forward on the winning end. And it can happen in that same point to both players that will take them in the opposite direction. So for Sabalenka, it could have been something that happened where she was in that same moment of winning, may have been break point or something, and she double faulted or missed an easy shot. And she said, oh no, I can't let it happen here. And as soon as you say, I can't let, and you bring something negative into your mindset, you've already lost, or you've already started going in the other direction. Not to say that you're going to lose a match, but you already start going in the other direction. And then if you lose 1 or 2 or 3 more points, then you're already telling yourself, oh no, I can't do this. I can't do this. Or I can't let this happen. And so you're losing that momentum right there. And then on the other side of the court for a Coco or whoever the opponent may be, they're saying, oh yeah, this is it. You know, I'm starting to feel my groove. I'm feeling good. Or it could be a similar match where it was a turning point where she was down a set and a break, got the break back and said, okay, I've been here before. Let's do this. I can run with it. And then her confidence and momentum starts to go the other way. So now they're going in the opposite direction. And then the match completely flips. You split sets, and then you know, it's any person's match at that point. But within that momentum of positivity and negativity, it all goes that way, right? So we've all been there. I've been there in understanding it takes 1 point or 1 shot to take you either here or here. And you know, it happens in every match. And it's just a matter of understanding how to control your mind and to stay here and not have these mood shifts to take you one way or the other. And that's the mental part of the game. And we talk about that, you know, like every player can hit a serve, forehand, backhand, volley, overhead. It's the mental part that separates the top 10 players from the rest of the pack and how they can keep it together in those moments.
Did you have like a mantra or a trick or something when you started to go down to get yourself back up?
It was difficult. I mean, I used to have 4 or 5 things written on like a piece of tape on the inside of my racket. that I could always look down, whether it was stay positive or, keep my head up or whatever it was. I still have some of those old rackets, so I could probably go back and see what they said. But whatever the reminders were for me that were triggers to stay positive in that regard, whether they worked or not. um, but, in certain moments, yeah, it was triggers that you have to have for yourself, on the mental side of things, because it only can take one shot that will trigger something from a year ago or a match from 3 months ago or from last week that you were in a similar situation that you lost, and lo and behold, here I am again. I'm like, "Oh god, here we go again." And you can be in total control of a match, but it's
Yeah.
the same shot, the same situation that just occurred, that just happened, that occurred in a previous match, and your mind is so powerful that it takes you backwards. And then all of a sudden you're like, "Wait, it was just 6-2, 3 love, and now I'm down 3-5. What happened?" Right? And it happens just like that. And then sometimes it's too late to recover. Sometimes you can recover and come out a winner, and then sometimes you can't, and then now you've done it twice.
Mm.
And it's hard, and then you go into this swell and of negativity, and some players never recover.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I love that perspective because I never thought about that. Like well, because I didn't play, but like, like that one shot that you're thinking about another match, can be such a huge influence in the current match. That's fascinating. Yeah. And now you see like a lot of, and I think this is so wonderful, like so many, players using sports psychologists because oh my God, the mental piece. When you were playing, did anybody have like a sports psychologist? Did you have anyone that sort of you leaned on for that?
Sports psychologists were around. I played 88 through 99, and so they were definitely accessible. They weren't as readily present as they are now. It was an expense, and we weren't making the money like they are today. So I did work with one locally in Chicago, for a little bit, but it was also an expense, probably an expense I should have used or spent more money on, and I didn't. But you have to pick and choose what you think you need. And I didn't spend the money on it, and I probably should have, because I thought it was more of a luxury than a necessity at the ranking that I had at the time when I started using them.
Well, also I think this conversation about mental health and then finally, it feels like there's a lot more concentration and importance on it. Of course, it should have been since day one. So, it's just thankfully like a different era and now it's a lot more acceptable and talked about and hopefully accessible to a lot of players. Okay, so here's a question just about having moments in your life. Was there a moment on the court, we're going to do on the court and off the court, but was there a moment on the court that you can remember when you had a sense of belonging, like I can do this, like I got this?
Oh yeah, first time I walked on the court, of course.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
I have a sense of belonging everywhere I go. So yeah, I mean, I was one of those players that I felt that I belong wherever I went. So even when I got on tour, um, I turned pro at 19. I went to college. I went to Northwestern for 2 years. Uh, After my sophomore year, I won the NCAA doubles championship at Northwestern with Diane Donnelly. And somewhere in my sophomore year, I had decided that I was going to turn pro, um, that next year. And so I was very lucky. I had a great coach that actually thought I was going to turn pro after my freshman year, which was not my intent. But I was we actually went undefeated that year in doubles. I think I was going to be returning probably the number 3 player in the country in singles. So it wasn't going to be a lot for me to accomplish tennis wise by returning back to school. Academically, of course. And I was at a top academic school, and communications was my major. They were the number 1 school in communications. Um, Definitely wanted to pursue broadcasting, commentating, things of that nature afterwards. So that was a purpose of me being there, one of the purposes. But fast forward, we were actually on quarters. So I actually had a conversation with my school if I could take the first quarter off, the fall quarter, and play as an amateur. Because, you grew up playing tennis all year long and competing. The summer, you always played every week and you got used to it. And then the rest of the year, you pretty much played on the weekends. But I was going to play the whole fall, week in and week out, take a week here off and there off. But I didn't really know if that's what I really wanted, or if I could go a level higher, because I was constantly playing the challengers, working on my ranking. But I said, hey, if I can get my ranking up, I'll turn pro in January. But if I don't do well, if I don't really like this traveling consistently, I'll come back, keep my scholarship, and we won't have this conversation again. And so that was a deal I made with the university. So I could take prize money throughout the fall to pay for my expenses, but nothing above that. And that was fine because, I kind of thought I was going back to school, but didn't know. Anyways, I got my ranking up high enough to get direct entry into the Australian Open in January. I found that out early December. So, I called him, said, hey, I'm going to Australia. Thanks. Turn pro. And so, I going out on tour, I was already playing in the challengers. I already had some friends that were on tour. And, I felt I belonged from day one. So I never had that inferior feeling. You know, I was just as cocky as I could be. Everyone, my nickname was Hollywood when I went out there, and it's still Hollywood. Um, so yeah, I never felt that I did not belong on tour or anywhere
Wow.
else that I go. My book is called Own the Arena for a reason.
Yeah.
People used to say, Kat, wherever you go, whatever room you walk into, you act like you own the room. I'm like, yeah, pretty much.
Well, I mean, that's what it takes, right? I did get your book. I absolutely love it. I'm going to put all the information of the book in the show notes. But yeah, I mean, that's that mentality, obviously, that, you know, proved to be a winner on the court and off the court. I just love that. I did not expect that answer as soon as I stepped on the court. That's so awesome, right? Because it's like, especially for women too. And that's what I loved about your book too. It's just such empowerment. You know, it's just, we talk ourselves out of everything. We go, oh, you know, da, 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 da. But like, that's what it takes. You just, you know, own the arena, own the court, step on and be like, I belong. Oh my God, that's so kick-ass. I absolutely love that answer. All right, well, that's a perfect transition into your tenure as CEO and president of USTA. And I wasn't, you know, I knew you were the first woman of color. I didn't know that you were the youngest. And I was like, all right, well, that was mind blowing. But then there was the piece that I read. I was really surprised to learn that you were the first former player. And I was just kind of curious, like, why was that? Like, I just assumed, you know, I didn't do a deep dive on like the former presidents of the USTA. I just assumed, oh, there would have been a lot more players on that list. So I was just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, so the USCA, the board and everyone is pretty much made up of a volunteer organization. So most of the leaders prior to me were all section presidents or former section presidents. The USCA is made up of 17 sections around the country, and many of these people were corporate leaders of some sort. All tennis players, all tennis players, but competitive players, probably played in college or played league tennis of some sort, but none of them really played professional tennis. So so everyone was very their IQ in tennis was great. Their IQ in business was great, but they didn't really compete on either the ATP tour or the WTA tour. So So it's not that they weren't tennis players, they just weren't professional tennis players. So I was the first former professional tennis player. So when I joined the board, I was what they called an elite athlete. Um, we are the national governing body of tennis in the US. And I think the largest national governing body of sport in the world, the richest in the world. And so as an NGB, you have to have 20% of your board has to be an elite athlete. So therefore, we have 15 board members, and 3 of the board members have to be elite athletes. The elite athlete is anyone who has been ranked top 50 in your nation within 10 years of retirement. So when I joined the board, I had been one of those top 50 ranked players in the nation within 10 years of retirement. And so that's how, when I joined the board and nominated, I fit that category. And then when that um, distinction expired, then I interviewed as a director of at large with the rest of all the other business people who wanted to be on the board. And I was nominated to be on the board as a director at large. So then I was like, oh, they actually appreciate and respect my viewpoint. So then I kind of said, oh, I actually do add value more so than just being an athlete, because sometimes you're like, oh, they don't have a lot of athletes, they just need somebody to be on the board, which was kind of like my initial thought. But then I learned otherwise, and then appreciated the organization um, much better. I mean, once I got on the board, I didn't really know much about the USTA before joining the board. I knew that they ran tournaments. I knew that I had a ranking. I knew that they ran the US Open. I knew they ran then Fed Cup, which is Billie Jean King Cup now. But once I got on the board, I learned a greater appreciation for who they are and what they did, because without the USTA, I would have never had the pathway of competitive tennis as a junior the way that I did, if it had not been for them, because of their junior programs, their collegiate programs, etc.
It is an enormous undertaking to be the president and CEO of the USTA, not only to grow the game on every level in the US, but also then to run the US Open. So you figured there would be like 4-year terms, 6-year terms, but the turn, like, to only do 2 years, that kind of struck me as like such a small amount of time to get things going. And to your credit, you're the only one to be nominated and do a 4-year term. But did you, I don't know why, it just felt like such a small amount of time for someone to kind of get everything going, and then boom, another one comes in.
Well, again, we are a volunteer-based organization, and so and then we have a full staff, and so our
Okay.
staff is really the ones that are there, obviously full term, and you work very closely with the staff. That, and it's your vision and your priorities that you're bringing to the table, and the staff is executing them. So you and the board are overseeing that process. And so, I had an amazing run with the staff. We have, the best of the best in the business, and working closely with them, and being able to execute alongside them was a great honor and a great experience. I learned a hell of a lot. And it was great to see a lot of my vision come to fruition, and to be able to go out and execute, and not just talk it, but walk it. And that was, extreme accomplishment, not only on my part but on the organization's part.
Well, it's huge. And also to be directly responsible. I mean, it's such a unique position to be in, having, been a professional tennis player, then to be in charge of the US Open, which is also mind-boggling. Um, everything that, you're responsible for every moment of the US Open. Like, what was like, tell me about like favorite part, like, what's the favorite part, what's the worst part about having that responsibility?
Well, again, the tournament is run by the tournament director. So that tournament director is in charge of the US
Yeah.
Open, to be frank. When it comes to the tournament, I mean, when it comes to the players and everything that is involved with the tournament, you got to give all credit to the tournament director, that's running the tournament. And then there's all the ancillary things that go around it. You have all the international guests that are coming in and all the sponsors that are involved, and you have the chief of revenue that is responsible for bringing all the sponsors in, and then you have your business development people that are there overseeing that. And so there's so many titles that are involved, and collectively everyone makes that tournament what it is. So again, it's working together with all of them and communicating. And so I always say no one does it alone. It's a huge team that makes that tournament work. It's a year-long process, and communicating and making sure that everyone is doing their part so that collectively we can have the most amazing event in the world.
It really is. I mean, I'm blown away every year how smooth it goes. Like all the, the working parts and the just from the players to fans. I've been there so many times. It is just my absolute favorite tournament. Well, favorite Grand Slam, but one of my favorite sporting events to go to. Do you get to enjoy it? Did you enjoy? I mean, you were USTA president 2015 to 2018. Like, did you get to go to matches and actually take some nights off, or was it like tons of like you're doing, the
It's
PR and
tough.
the meets and greets?
No, it's yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, listen, it was uh, the nights were very short. Let's put it that way. I mean, I was often up at for 6 a.m. meetings, many days, and I was often on site till midnight. I actually tried to leave by 10:30. A lot of nights I would at least stay for the first match, maybe the first set of the second match, depending on how long the first match went. But I definitely, I enjoyed myself.
Yeah.
Enjoy myself more now, but I definitely enjoyed myself. But it's great to see what the team has continued to do and continue to elevate it. Stacey Allister, who's a tournament director right now, our first female tournament director for the U.S. Open. She's doing amazing things. She has an amazing vision. The tournament continues to grow under her leadership. Lou Scher, who's the CEO now, he's done a remarkable job with his team. Danny Zausner, who's the chief executive of the entire facility, has continued to reimagine what that facility looks like. I happened to be there when we designed everything that's there right now for the transformation of the center, with the roof over ash and rebuilding Louis Armstrong and grandstand and everything else that was redone in my tenure. But they're always going to evolve and make things bigger and better. And so, excited to be kind of on the outside looking in and supporting their efforts.
Well, now you can have a margarita and sit in the stands and just enjoy it.
There,
I mean,
honeydew,
after
honeydews. There you go.
that's right, the honeydew. That's right. Oh, I gotta have a couple of those. Just curious as a fan, like how do you determine, and I know you're saying there's a US Open director, but how do you determine who plays, at what time? I know a lot of it's ranking, but during the US Open, it's like sometimes I'm just kind of shocked of like, wow, that feels like, these two should be playing, at night and they're on like court three, during the day. Are there like a lot of, is it that seems to be like a lot of politics, a lot of stress? Like I'm just curious to know how that works.
No, there's a system in place. I mean, when the draw is made, first and foremost, there's like a flip of a coin to determine who plays the top half and who plays the bottom half, on day one. And so once that is determined, then everything kind of falls into place for the rest of the tournament. And knowing who's playing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, and Tuesday, Thursday, so forth and so on. And then from there, it's determined, once those matches are matched up, and then you have to have consistency, right? So once once it starts with the night matches, there's kind of consistency on who's playing in the night because of the rest that's involved. When I say rest, like proper physical rest, and when those matches are played. So there's consistency on this part of the draw because of the timing of when they're played, right? Whether it's the day or the night. Everything just kind of flows together. So if in fact there is inclement weather, you're not thrown off because you've now had certain sides of the draw that have played at this time of the day that got their match in, but now this side didn't get their matches in because the weather was good, and this part of the day the weather was bad, and now you've got everything thrown off and you can't complete certain sides of the draw. So there is a method to the madness, and it's not easy.
No, I mean, it's overwhelming. There was a couple of matches here and there where you go, God, these two are like, two Americans facing each other, the height of their popularity. Why are they playing at 4 o'clock and not 7 o'clock? And like, I think that, I can't remember who was playing tonight. I think it was like a Djokovic or something like that. And I was like, is there pivots during the day of just like, then again, and like, do you call the number 2 wonder player in the world and be like, hey, you're playing at 4 and these Americans are playing at 7 because it's a more popular match? I'm like, do those
It
scenarios
all
happen?
I mean, and when it comes to Labor Day weekend, you also have to think of what's the viewership at home,
Yeah,
right? So what may appear to be prime time for you is not prime time for America at that time on a holiday weekend. So
gotcha.
what's the viewership? Most people are at home on a holiday weekend during the day and maybe not at night, right? What else is going on network when you have college football going on versus, not. So you have to, there's a lot of other factors that go into play when it comes with your TV partners as well. And European time zones versus or Asian time zones, yada, 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 yada. So depending on who's playing, there's so many factors that come into play. So if you have, say, you have an Asian player, your top Asian player that's playing, you don't put them on at in the morning when it's midnight, right? So if you
Yeah,
put them noon here, it's midnight in Asia. And so their viewership is not their home is not awake. So sometimes you have to put them on in the
I
evening
gotcha.
so that their viewership is awake. Same thing for Europe, right? So it just depends on who's playing, who they're playing, so forth and so on. So it may, there is a method to the madness and you can never please everyone, but you're trying to please your constituents, your partners, right? Because all your broadcasts, all your broadcasters are partners that are there, and you're going to get requests for certain times, and you can't please them all, but you're going to have to try to make some things match up.
Yeah,
So
that's good to know. Sometimes it just seems so easy on the outside of being like, well, why can't they just put that match at 7 o'clock? But
yeah, because
you
you
realize
want to
there's a
play
lot.
at a certain time doesn't mean that that's when they're going to play, right? I
I'm
get it.
like,
I
is
get
there a
it.
hotline? Is there a
Yeah,
hotline
I know
I could
you had
call?
dinner reservations that night and you wanted them to play in the daytime, but yeah.
It would be a lot more convenient for Aaron Full if you guys played at 4. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Um, okay, just a couple quick things. So I was just looking at the tenure of like the U.S. Opens and you being the president of the USTA, and they were pretty overwhelming. I'm just talking women's side, 2015, 16, 17, and 18. And they all kind of were loaded in a different way. 2015, Serena sells out. She's going for the Grand Slam, and then loses to, I think it was Vinci in the semis. I'll never get over that match. And
I'm still recovering.
yeah, I can't. That's a whole separate podcast. There was just so many dumb drop shots, and I was losing my mind. No offense to her, I'm sure she's a wonderful person. But as you're running this tournament, the women's side sells out faster than the men, and so then that happens, and then there's this beautiful moment. I highlighted this when I had this podcast back in the day. Sloane Stephens, Madison Keys, 2017. I mean, two, African American women. I thought that was huge. We had seen it before with Venus and Serena, but that also just seemed like, oh my God, now we've come even further. And the goosebump moment for me is when Stevens goes over to the other side of the court and sits down next to Madison Keys. Like, I could cry right
Yeah,
now. I thought
that
it
was
was that was such an incredible moment. And you're there, of course, to see all of this. And then 2018 hits with the Serena Osaka match, which I'm still recovering from. And I read in your book, and I know it's too long to get into, but I did not know that you personally had to go on a press tour after that moment happened, um, to sort of, explain your remarks after the match, which was so clear to me that you were talking more about the match. But I wonder if you could just kind of just talk us through that, because that was such a incredible moment that I did not know you had to deal with in that way.
Yeah, no, it was pretty interesting. I mean, all those years were very special in their own way that you mentioned. But for 2018, which was my last year as president, and the way that it ended, um, was pretty significant. And again, you have a Serena Williams who's out there trying to win her 24th, and then you have the up and coming Osaka, who's there winning her first US Open, and first major. And it's like, wow, this is what a sweet moment, to even be able to witness and be a part of it. And of course, the debacle of the behavior and what happened on the court, from Serena's side. But, the booing and everything that happened from the crowd and, during the match, and then, that occurred again during the trophy presentation, which kind of caught me off guard, was kind of overwhelming, I think, for not I think, but was overwhelming for the players as well as myself. And, and Serena kind of took charge and made some comments, to protect Naomi in that moment. And then shortly after, I had to make my remarks, and I'm sitting here going, what the hell am I going to say after this? Like, whoa, I'm not going to, this isn't a moment to make my usual congratulatory remarks. But, I just kind as a friend of the two of them, and kind of an auntie, if you will,
Yeah.
I'm trying to make light of it, and really let both of them know how proud I was of them in that moment, and what we witnessed, and say that, hey, I know this isn't the way that either one of you would want to end this match, or win this match or lose this match, based on the outcome of what happened in the activities during the match, not the outcome of who won or lost. And so my words were misconstrued, and people were blaming me that, oh, you wanted Serena to win, oh, you're a racist, oh, you're this. I'm like, how the hell am I a racist? Have you
I'm
looked
like,
at both of them? I mean, I was called everything under the moon. So meanwhile,
oh,
after the match, we're doing our, normal celebratory stuff. It's gone over my head as to all the other stuff. And Twitter is having a field day on me. My phone's blowing up. I have no idea what's going on. Um, I'm riding back to the hotel, and I'm checking my phone, and I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, what's going on? And get all these texts. And then I'm like, I have to do an interview the next day. And I'm like, what? For what? And so that's how it all happened. So I ended up going on ESPN the next day. And to their credit, actually, they were giving me the platform because they actually were supporting me. I think my initial thought was that I had to clarify myself, but it was actually giving me the platform to support me. But I just thought everybody was attacking me. Um, and then I was CBS Morning wanted me to come on, on Monday. It was like everywhere I went, and I was like, wow. So I wrote about it in the book, um, more verbatim. So if you buy the book, Own the Arena, you can read it. Um, and it kind of explains it with more clarity. I didn't want to give you all of it because I want you to buy the book.
Yeah, absolutely buy the book, because I mean, I certainly knew everything that happened on the court, and I knew there was like maybe a little bit of backlash, I think, on like, I'm putting like USTA or officials at large. But when I read the book, I was like, oh my God, I had no idea like that you personally had to go on a press tour, and them saying like, well, you're black, so you're rooting for Serena, and you're like, Osaka's black. Because does anybody like read anymore? Like, it was just unbelievable that you had to tackle that after what happened. But you did it so beautifully, and the book is absolutely fantastic. I just love for you to speak about what you're doing now with the Harlem Junior program, so everybody can kind of know about that. And I will link to the website and all that good stuff in the show notes.
Yeah, so great. So I'm the executive director of the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program. We're an NJTL chapter. I've been involved for 18 years. Our program was founded in 1972. So we are serving kids from ages 5 to 18, putting rackets in their hands, providing tennis education and wellness. So, our goal is using tennis as a vehicle for these kids to earn a college scholarship. So we're developing champions in tennis education and wellness. It's a labor of love for me. I grew up in a program very similar to this in Chicago. And so, it's about providing these kids an opportunity, a safe haven for them to come to, a sense of family and home for them. We love hanging out with the kids. The kids love hanging out with us on and off the court in the facility, but we're bursting at the seams. We're actually looking to expand to build our own facility so that we can serve more kids in the community. We really want to be able to offer these services to more kids in the community, but also to adults to be able to, have more health and wellness opportunities with tennis, provide clinics for adults, maybe leagues, et cetera, because we are a youth program, but the facility really only services our youth. We operate out of the Armory. We don't manage the facility, but we'd love to have our own facility so that we can expand opportunities for our youth, but also have a bigger facility so the adults can come and play and compete and see our kids and become mentors and, lifelong provide lifelong opportunities for them in their workspace for years to come. So please support us. It's all about we are a low to no cost program. We are in the inner city of Harlem, and these kids are amazing.
Oh my God, I love it. Yeah, and I will, listeners out there, I will link to the website, but there's very easy ways on the website just to donate, to contribute, to become a partner. It's so feel good. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Also, just as a tennis fan, I'm just going to speak for everybody. Thank you so much for all your efforts growing the game and just being a champion of inclusivity and equity in tennis. It's just huge what you've done with your career. And thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Katrina Adams, everyone. So glad I got to talk to her. She's just a tennis legend. And buy her book. It's called Own the Arena. And it's not just about tennis. It's really about female empowerment and her personal story of stepping into any room and owning it. It's a great read. Okay, people, we have reached the feel-good moment of the week, and it's Simone Augustus. I mean, she is one of the greatest basketball players of all time, and last week she was inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. Her career is incredible. She won 4 WNBA championships with the Lynx, 3 Olympic gold medals. She was an 8-time All-Star, and that's just a few of her accomplishments. But what makes this extra special is her Hall of Fame induction speech. It's going to be remembered as one of the best of all time. It's poetry, it's lyrical, it's magical. Just listen to this clip.
Home is where the heart is, and where the heart is, it grows. I want to tell you a story about a girl from the bayou who cooked up a good pot of gumbo. Sprinkle in a little Pistol Pete, Dr. J, Teresa Edwards, Allen Iverson, and many more. They all helped me develop the game that you all adored. It all started in a gravel driveway where basketballs bounce like a river's gentle flow, underneath the live oaks where the Spanish moss hang low. In the bayou, basketball is a timeless grace. There's a dance, a rhythmic trance, where the swamp sweet whispers merges with your dreams to take flight and passions ignite. On this enchanted stage, and in my Cajun rhythm, my love for the game was truly defined. From jump shots to layups, each move refined. And in my game, passion was deeply intertwined.
I'm telling you, listen to her full speech because it's just incredible. A huge congrats to Simone Augustus, Hall of Famer on and off the court. And that is our show, everyone. I'll see you in Chicago and Minneapolis this weekend. All the ticket info is on herlights.com. So check that out. Get your tickets. Super, super excited. And while I have you here, please rate and review the show. It's super important. Throw down the 5 stars and say something fun because it makes my day. Fans, friends, family, have the best week of your life.